I never thought retirement would feel like disappearing. After 37 years building custom cabinetry, my hands knew exactly what to do with themselves. But the rest of me rattled around that house like a marble in a shoebox. Linda had passed 4 years earlier, and my son Marcus kept telling me to find something. Volunteer, travel, take a class. Dad, he'd say, you can't just sit there watching the news and getting angry at it. So I didn't. A buddy of mine from church, Terrence, ran a small cleaning crew that serviced downtown office buildings and a couple of upscale hotels on Commerce Street. He needed reliable people. Early hours, quiet work, no politics, no performance reviews, just you and the job and the satisfaction of leaving something better than you found it. I told him I'd give it a shot for a month. That was 14 months ago. I want you to understand something, friends, before I tell you what happened. When you're a man my age, 61, gray at the temples, the kind of face people look through in grocery store lines, and you're pushing a supply cart through a hotel corridor at 6 in the morning, you become furniture. People walk past you the way they walk past a vending machine. They don't say good morning. They don't make eye contact. They finish conversations on their phones without lowering their voices, because as far as they're concerned, you're not really there. I had learned to find a kind of peace in that invisibility. Until the morning, I heard a voice I recognized coming from room 412. My daughter Claire is 34. She has her mother's laugh and her grandfather's stubbornness and a gift for seeing the best in people that I have always admired and occasionally wanted to shake her for. She's a physical therapist, works at a rehabilitation center on the east side of the city, helps people relearn how to walk after strokes and accidents. She calls me every Sunday, always has. About 8 months ago, the Sunday calls started sounding different. Lighter. There was a laughter in her voice that hadn't been there in a while, and I knew what that sound meant before she told me his name. Daniel Hartwell. She met him at a fundraiser for a children's hospital. He was a commercial real estate developer, she said. 40 years old, never married, very driven. He donated a significant amount to the event. She mentioned that twice, like it was meant to be reassuring. I asked the questions a father asks. Is he kind to you? Does he listen when you talk? She said yes to both, and I believed her, because Claire doesn't give her trust easily. Her mother raised her right in that regard. I met him once, briefly, at a birthday dinner for Claire's friend in October. We shook hands. He had a firm grip and a rehearsed smile, the kind men develop when they've discovered that smiling on command opens doors. He called me sir and asked about my woodworking in a way that made me feel like he'd Googled me beforehand. Not rude, not warm. Efficient. I drove home that night thinking, I don't know what I think yet. By December, Claire told me they were talking about the future. She said it carefully, the way you carry something fragile. I said I was happy for her and meant most of it. The hotel on Commerce Street, the Alderton Grand, is a 14-story business hotel that caters mostly to corporate travelers. My shift starts at 5:45 in the morning. By the time the first guests are ordering room service, my crew has already turned over a floor and a half. I was assigned to the 4th floor on a Tuesday in late January. Cart loaded, master key clipped to my belt, earbuds in my chest pocket but not in my ears. Terrence had a rule about that, said it was a liability issue. Room 412 was a standard executive room, booked for 3 nights according to the sheet on my cart. I knocked. Housekeeping. Waited the standard 10 seconds. Knocked again. No answer. I opened the door. The room was occupied not by a person, but by the evidence of one. Suit jacket on the chair back. Leather bag open on the desk. A half-drunk cup of coffee going cold on the nightstand. Whoever had this room had stepped out recently and would probably be back. I had about 20 minutes of work to do. I started with the bathroom. That's when I heard the door open. I didn't come out. That's not the protocol. You finish what you're doing, you work efficiently, you don't make the guests feel crowded in their own space. So I kept moving, replacing the toiletries, refolding the hand towels, wiping down the mirror. And then I heard his voice. Yeah, no, she has no idea. That's the whole point. I went still. Not because of the words. You hear fragments of conversations in this work. People say things in hotel rooms they'd never say at a dinner table. I had learned not to attach meaning to half-heard sentences. But the voice, I knew that voice. I stood in that bathroom doorway, not hiding, not eavesdropping on purpose, just frozen and Daniel Hartwell sat down on the edge of the bed 6 feet away from me with his phone to his ear, and he did not look up once. Just like I said, furniture. The Denver thing is happening regardless, he said. I've already talked to Kowalski about the position. It's done. I just haven't told Claire yet because if I tell her now, she'll want to have a whole conversation about it instead of just trusting that I've figured it out. A pause. She'll come around. That's the thing about Claire. She thinks she's independent, but she needs someone to make the decisions. Her last relationship fell apart because the guy let her run everything. She needs structure. I did not move. I could not move. The lease on her apartment is up in April anyway. Perfect timing. She moves in with me in February. We get engaged in the spring, and by summer we're both in Denver. Her credentials transfer. She'll find work. It's not like physical therapy is hard to find anywhere. Another pause. He laughed at something the other person said. No, man. She doesn't need to be involved in the planning stage. That's what I'm telling you. Once it's all locked in, she'll see it makes sense and she'll get on board. She always does. He stood up then, walked to the window, looked out at the parking structure across the street. I walked back into the bathroom and stood over the sink and looked at myself in the mirror I had just wiped clean. My daughter. He was talking about my daughter like she was a variable in a spreadsheet, like her career was a detail to be managed. Like her voice in her own future was something that would only complicate the timeline. I turned the water on so he wouldn't hear me breathing. I finished the room. I don't remember finishing it, but I must have, because later that day Terrence told me 412 had gotten a perfect card from the guest. That detail has never stopped bothering me. I sat in the supply room on my break, and I thought about what to do. My first instinct was to call Claire immediately. Tell her everything I'd heard, word for word. But I sat with that impulse for a few minutes, and I let it breathe. The way my father used to tell me to let lumber breathe before you work it. Let it settle into its own shape. And I thought about what would happen if I called her. Claire would listen. She would be quiet in that way she gets when she's processing something difficult. And then she would ask me, how do I know this? And I would tell her I was cleaning his hotel room. And there would be a silence on the line, and she would say, Dad, you were in his room? And then it would become about that, about me being there, about context and fair chances, and maybe he was just venting to a friend. She would remind me, gently but firmly, that she was 34 years old. She would remind me of the time I'd been wrong about her college boyfriend who, to be fair, I had been wrong about. I put my phone back in my pocket. Here's the thing I've had to make peace with, friends. I didn't record that conversation. I want to be honest about that. I've worked through my reasons since then, and I'll give them to you straight. First, this state requires both parties to consent to a recording. Second, and I know this sounds like an excuse, but it is also true, I was so stunned in that moment that recording didn't occur to me until I was already in the supply room. And third, even if I'd had a recording, I'm not sure it would have done what I needed it to do. You can't hand someone evidence of the life they're about to live and expect it to hit harder than what they discover on their own. I had learned that the hard way with Claire's college boyfriend. What I needed wasn't evidence. What I needed was for Daniel Hartwell to say these things where Claire could hear them herself. So I waited. I went back to work the next day, and the day after that, Daniel's room was reassigned to another member of my crew on Wednesday. But the Alderton Grand wasn't his only property in the area. I'd seen him in the lobby before. I just hadn't known who he was. Now I did. I started paying a different kind of attention. The way he spoke to the front desk staff. Not rude too, practiced to be rude, but economical. The kind of man who has learned that courtesy is currency, and he spends it precisely. A smile when he needed something, eye contact when it served him, and then nothing. Gone. The person on the other side of the counter ceased to exist the moment the transaction ended. I watched him hold a door open for a woman in a business suit and let it close on the guy behind her with a maintenance badge. I watched him on his phone in the lobby cafe, laughing loudly enough that the tables around him had to raise their voices, not registering or not caring that he was the disruption. I thought about Claire, her patience, her generosity. The way she sends thank you texts to people who've done small things for her because Linda raised her to notice the small things. I thought about what it would mean for her to spend her life with someone who only sees people when they're useful. I started writing things down, not for evidence, for myself, to keep it organized in my head. Dates, things I observed, things I overheard in common spaces, the lobby, The corridor near the fitness room where voices carried. Nothing from private rooms. One time was enough. I have a cousin, Reginald, who is a family law attorney. I called him not to threaten anything, but because I am an old man who needed to understand his options without making them worse. He said what I expected him to say. I had no legal standing to intervene in my adult daughter's relationship. What I had was parenthood, which is a different kind of standing entirely. He also reminded me, before we hung up, that Claire was smart. You raised her, he said. Trust what you raised. It was Terrence who inadvertently handed me the moment. The Alderton hosts a lot of corporate events, private dinners, board retreats, cocktail receptions in the second-floor banquet space. In mid-February, a commercial real estate association booked the Thornton Room for a Friday night reception. Terrence asked me to work the setup crew that afternoon, then stay as part of the service staff. Extra hours, time and a half. I almost said no. I didn't. The reception started at 7. Around 8:15, I was moving through the room with a tray of small plates, and I turned a corner near the bar, and there was Daniel Hartwell with a glass of bourbon and 2 men I didn't know, talking in that elevated tone people use at professional events when they want to be overheard as much as heard. He did not look at me. The Denver office opens Q3, he was saying. I've already got the key people committed. It's going to be a serious operation. He swirled his glass. And I'll have fewer distractions by then. My personal situation is getting sorted out. One of the men asked what he meant. Daniel smiled the way I'd seen him smile at the front desk. Efficient. Getting engaged. My girlfriend, fiance, I guess by then she's relocating with me. It's a good setup. She's a physical therapist. Very stable. Solid income while I'm building the new operation. The way he said it, very stable. Solid income. Like he was describing a load-bearing wall. I kept moving. I had learned, by then, how to keep moving. Here is what I want you to understand, friends. The anger I felt in that moment was not the hot, blinding kind. It was the cold, clarifying kind. The kind that doesn't want to break anything. The kind that wants to be useful. I called Claire that Sunday. Told her I'd been doing some event work downtown and had ended up at a real estate reception, all true. Mentioned I'd overheard some interesting talk about development projects in Denver. Kept it vague. Asked her, casually as I could manage, whether she and Daniel had talked much about his business expansion plans. There was a pause. He's mentioned Denver a few times, she said carefully. Why? Just curious, I said. He seems like an ambitious guy. I'd imagine his work takes him in a lot of directions. Another pause, shorter. Dad, what are you not saying? That's the thing about raising a smart child. Eventually, they turn it on you. I said, I think it would be worth having a direct conversation with him about the future, about where you both see things going, specifically. Not generally, specifically. She was quiet for a long moment. You know something. I know that you deserve a partner who plans with you, not for you. And I know the difference between those two things is everything. She didn't push. But something had shifted in her. I could feel it through the phone. Claire has her mother's instincts. Once those instincts are activated, they don't switch back off. 3 weeks later, she called me on a Thursday evening. Not Sunday, I asked him, she said. About Denver. I sat down. He's already accepted a position there. He's already signed a lease on an apartment. He told me he'd been waiting for the right moment to bring it up. Her voice was steady, but I knew my daughter. Steady is what she sounds like when she is holding something heavy with both hands. When I asked him why he hadn't talked to me before making those decisions, he said he didn't want me to worry about the logistics until they were handled. I didn't say anything. I let her have the space. He said I'd been struggling with big decisions lately, and he was trying to protect me from the stress. A long exhale. Dad, I have not been struggling with big decisions. I just bought a car. I restructured my entire patient caseload last fall without breaking a sweat. I don't know where he got that idea, unless she stopped. Unless it was already his idea of who you were, I said quietly. She was quiet for a moment. He said I'd come around once I saw how good the opportunity was. Another pause. He used the phrase come around. Like I was a reluctant client. Claire, I know, Dad. What are you going to do? She made a sound that was half laugh, half something harder. I've already done it. I told him tonight that I won't be relocating to Denver and that I won't be with someone who makes life-altering decisions about our shared future without including me in the conversation. He told me I was being reactive, a beat. So I left. I put my hand over my eyes. I didn't cry. I just held the phone and breathed. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'm going to be," she said. And I believed her entirely, because those are the words her mother used to say, and Linda Gaines always made good on them. There is no dramatic confrontation at the end of this story, friends. No public moment where the truth comes out in front of a crowd. I've heard those stories, and I understand why people find them satisfying, but this is what actually happened, and I think it is its own kind of justice. Daniel Hartwell left for Denver in June. I heard this from Claire, who had heard it from a mutual acquaintance. He was already seeing someone else by March. Apparently, she had fewer opinions about logistics. Claire is good, better than good. She took on 2 new patients this fall who were particularly challenging cases. And she called me one Sunday to tell me that one of them, a 68-year-old man recovering from a spinal injury, had walked the length of the hallway without assistance for the first time that week. She was crying a little when she told me, the good kind. She came for dinner last month. I made her mother's pot roast, the one with the pearl onions that takes all day. We sat at the kitchen table after, with the dishes still in the sink because neither of us wanted to break the moment, and she looked at me and said, "You knew, didn't you?" Before I figured it out. I looked at my coffee cup. "I knew something," I said. "I didn't know everything, but you didn't just tell me. Would it have landed the same way?" She thought about it, honest to the core, always has been. Finally, she shook her head. "No, I needed to hear it from him." We were quiet for a while. The furnace kicked on. The house settled. "Mom would have done the same thing," Claire said. "Let me figure it out myself while silently arranging the situation." I laughed. It came out bigger than I expected. "Your mother," I said, "was much more elegant about it than I was." "You did okay, Dad." She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. "You did okay. I still work for Terrence." Tuesday and Thursday mornings, the 4th floor of the Alderton Grand. I'm not doing it because I need the money or because I have nothing else. I'm doing it because there is something deeply satisfying about work that is simple and honest and visible in its results. You walk into a room, you leave it better, you move on. Nobody looks at me when I'm pushing that cart down the corridor. That's all right. I know what I see. I see people in unguarded moments who they are when they think no one is watching. And I want to tell you something, friends, that 14 months of this work has taught me as surely as anything I learned in 37 years of building furniture. The way a person treats someone they don't have to be kind to will tell you everything. Everything. Before they've said a word about who they are and what they value and whether they are someone your daughter should trust with her life, that moment at the door, that glance or lack of one, that word or silence it tells you. I just happened to be standing in the right place to hear it. My name is Frank Gaines. I'm 61 years old. I push a cart through a hotel on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and I go home and have coffee and call my daughter on Sundays. And some days that is more than enough. Some days it is everything. Watch the quiet ones. The people who show up early, who do the work without asking for recognition, who pay attention when no one thinks they're paying attention, they see everything. Frank didn't save his daughter with a dramatic speech. He saved her by staying present, staying patient, and trusting that love sometimes means creating space for someone to find the truth themselves. That kind of love is always worth learning from. A small note for you. This story was created and fictionalized by AI, crafted to bring you a moment of entertainment while also leaving something genuinely useful behind a reminder that quiet, steady love is one of the most powerful forces there is.